So I'm going to go into present mode and share my screen with you. I've changed screens and I'm logged in here as a demo teacher on our 1, 2, 3 demonstration site, Nick the teacher. And Nick the teacher has several different ways of using Meet to communicate with students. One is just to come to meet.google.com, the URL we've got here, and I can just set up a meeting straight away with somebody else by going join or start a meeting. And I can call it a quick nickname. So let's call this one imaginatively test. And it then creates that meeting. That meeting is ready for me to now share with anybody I wish. I'm the only person sitting in the meeting. I get the options of turning off my microphone, turning off my camera, just the way that you did, and I can join the meeting. So I'm going to just join the meeting, but with it muted. So I'm now in 2 meetings on 2 different accounts on 2 windows. Let's hope you're still with me, because this is going to be the interesting bit. So it comes up with a nickname, which anyone within our domain, so I'm on the 123 ICC domain, can just use that to join the meeting. You also get a URL, a link, which you can share with people, and you can go copy joining information, and then you'll be able to paste that into an email, or you can add people straight into a meeting. So if you wanted to talk to another student, so we've got our student called Albert, I can start searching for Albert, and I could then send him the invitation straight away to come and join me, or I can call via a number, but we won't be using that, so we'll ignore the call by a number. So I could send an invite to Albert, and Albert would then get the invite to join me. However, it's less useful. It's a good tool if you want to talk to a colleague, probably is probably the easiest way of using this, but it's not quite so useful in some respects. So I'm going to hang up out of that call, leave that call, because that's one way of creating a meet. The second way is a new feature of Classroom, Google Classroom. So going back into the test class I used yesterday, in Classroom now, inside settings, what we've got is the ability to create a special meet just for the class occupants. So a Classroom here would be obviously shared with children already, and I can actually enable Meet for this class. So it automatically allows this particular group of children to come into this session. So a classroom, yes, could be my class. If I was teaching a year 5 class, it could be my year 5 class. A classroom can be broader than that. You can actually have a classroom that the whole school's allowed to join. You can have up to 500 people in a class at once. So long as your school is less than 500, yes, you could have a classroom for everyone and say, right, here's our big meet. It would be a bit messy, I suspect, but it's possible to do that. So yes, a meet could be in a classroom for a small group, or a large group, or a whole class. So to enable it, I have to go into the settings for my classroom. So you have to generate a Meet code to start off with, which I've just done, and that creates the code exactly the similar as we had before. This is a slightly different Meet code, however, interestingly, and it's immediately enabled it so it's visible to students. So if I switch screens and we go and have a look at what Albert, our student, gets to look at the moment, Albert is a member of the class, so I can take him into the class. And at the moment, here's the stream with what normally goes on in his day-to-day life. And here is class work, and there are some bits and pieces for him to be doing. But at the moment, he hasn't got access to this Meet because it's not been finished setting it up yet. So at the moment, this is how his screen looks to him. If I enable that, if I save that Meet and switch on that Meet for my students in this particular class, test class, I now have got inside classwork a link through to Meet where I can enable that Meet as a teacher. If we swap back to Albert, that's appeared for Albert now. It's instantaneous, it's fairly quick. However, if Albert says, oh great, I can jump into a Meet, and he clicks on that button, what will happen is it will tell him that unfortunately he can't join it yet because he can't create it himself and the teacher hasn't gone into this Meet yet. So that's quite nice that they can't just carry on using it quite happily. Albert, the student, unfortunately can't start the Meet. So if teacher says, right, okay, now it's time to meet, and maybe using the stream, the teachers announce something that we will meet at, we will meet at 11:12. post so that people know that the meet's going to work and when it's going to work, for example, or it could be emailed out to families. It doesn't matter how you disseminate the information, so long as they know to come to the classroom at this time. I have the Meet link here. I can go into classwork and I can click on Meet, and it will jump me as teacher into the Meet, and it will get me ready to join the Meet, just like we did a minute ago. I'm going to mute my microphone just so we don't get a lot of feedbacky noises, and I can join that meeting for my classroom. So as teacher, I'm now in the meeting. This is where I warned you we're going down a rabbit hole. I'm going to change to Albert again, and Albert now has the Meet link. And on his stream, he also has the Meet link. So, you know, it's all great, we're meeting 11:12. It's 11:12 now. Albert now can click on the link, and because the teacher has opened it, Albert's allowed to join. So Albert can come on into that space. And again, Albert's camera is going to start. I'm going to mute Albert just to make things easier for now. And he knows that I'm already in the call. The teacher's in the call. And Albert has now joined that call. So I've now got Albert. There's Albert in the call. So we have two participants in this Meet having this chat, Albert and the teacher, and both are active in the call. And then as teacher, I can talk to Albert. I can use the call with Albert, and I can use some of the features with Albert quite happily. Again, I can see who is in the call. So Albert is in the call. Too many Chrome windows open is not going to help much. So Albert's in the call, and Albert can be, I can interact with Albert. If Albert's being noisy, I can mute Albert. He's not, he's muted himself, which is great. I can also pin Albert to the screen, which makes his image nice and large, so I can concentrate on looking at that one image. If Albert was going to hold up a piece of work, for example, to his camera, make it easier for me, I could pin him to the screen so I can see. I also, as teacher, have the ability to remove him from this Meet, to say, actually, Albert, you're just not coping, mate. Off you go, and hit the remove button, and that's perfectly fine, and I will leave everyone else still in here. There are some extra tools which we'll have a quick look at. So as teacher, yes, I can present exactly the same way that I'm presenting at the moment my screen to you. It lets you choose to present in my entire window or a particular window. And so you can share a PowerPoint or a story from a book that you may have photographs of, or images of, or a web page, or anything else you've got on your computer. Even a video clip could be shared this way. And there are a couple of extra settings I've got in the 3 dots. So one is where you find the option to record meeting. And the record meeting feature is what I'm using, as I say, to record this at the moment. And it will make a recording of the video and audio for all the users, as well as all the text chat. And it will place that recording into the My Drive of the teacher, into a special file called Meet Recordings. So that's automatically handled and automatically stored in the cloud, so you don't need to worry about that, but it's a really nice feature, and the recording stops automatically when you leave the meeting. I've also got some other features I can change. I can change the layout of the screen automatically. It tries to work out what's best for me. I've got some other options I can switch between if I wish to look at particular ways at the screen. I've also got, there we go. Again, I can turn on captions, which we'll look at in a minute, and there's some odd settings. I can check audio settings. This is where you can sometimes troubleshoot problems if you've ended up with multiple cameras or multiple microphones being used. And I can switch to using a phone for audio if I like, as well as reporting a problem in the help page. So I'm going to just swap back to being Albert, and Albert's going to decide to leave the meeting. Albert gets the hang up button in the middle at the bottom, which you can't quite see. He's left the meeting now. And now as teacher, once the meeting's empty, if I leave the meeting, there we go. So teacher has also left the meeting. At the moment, we've got a slight issue because Albert can decide to rejoin the meeting and head back into the meeting to catch up with his friends if he's not careful. Luckily, that's now been fixed. This was an issue until very recently, that actually students could get back in. it's now popping up with a message saying, no, sorry, you can't join this video call. The teacher left it, and therefore it's now shut, which is absolutely great. However, obviously, the temptation will always be, look, I've got this little link. I can go back it. Again, it's locking them out automatically, which is absolutely brilliant. So this is the thing that wasn't working for a number of months. So this update now is working, which is great. However, as teacher, what you can also do is you can say, okay, right, we've finished with the meet. I'd rather just not have it there anymore. And that's absolutely fine. Inside the settings for your classroom, you can always decide that actually I don't want it to be visible to the students. And that just gets rid of that little button and that indication that Meet would be there to stop them having the, I should click on it, I should try and get into it. So as teacher, you've got that ultimate control. When you've switched on a Meet, you can always say, no, I don't want it to be visible to students any longer, and just switch it back off again. So it's quite easy now to manage for classes. And that's probably the safest and easiest way now of using a Meet, is to do it in via Classroom. So that's certainly our recommended way of using Meet, is do it via a classroom if at all possible. The third option is to actually schedule a Meet via a calendar. And calendars can be used with students, because each classroom has a calendar. So here I've got a massive list of classes and each class has its own calendar. So I could decide that my test class is going to have a meet at a certain time, and we can say, okay, at 1 p.m. I'm going to schedule it for a quick chat. You pop a title in, and inside more options, what you can now do is add conferencing and say, I want it to be a meet. And that will then become part of the calendar entry, and anyone who you've shared the calendar with. So if I go, for example, let's go for my test class, training class, there we are. So that's my training class. That would allow in all the members of that class to join this meet. So there's the second way of scheduling it. To be honest, now that it's available as a classroom option, I think that the calendar option is less of a positive thing. But yes, in theory, if you've done it, and if when you've created it, you've remembered to add it to the right classroom, which of course I didn't do. There we go. Let's add it to test class. In fact, we got it to lovely test class April 21. Then that would be available in the calendar for that group of people. So calendar is the third way of setting it up. So probably we need to think about why you might want to use Classroom and Meets. Meets can be used for all sorts of different features. So the Meet can be used to work with small groups, to hear guided reading. We've heard it used for spellings tests, where teachers will actually sit down with a group and say, okay, you write this word down, and then when you're ready, I'll ask you to hold up your piece of paper to the screen and I can see what you've written. So there are lots of ways. It's nice. Lots of children are missing the ability to talk to people and missing their teachers. So just engaging with them, just having a sit down and a chat with them is brilliant. A number of schools that I'm working with have started using it this week. And I've heard very, very positive things, and the students are really, really enjoying the opportunity to be able to meet and chat with each other. So there's an awful lot of positives certainly around Meet. As I say, I was slightly worried about the control aspects, but now we've got the ability to say in a classroom, I've got a Meet. I can easily switch it on and off and make it available to students. It makes a lot of difference to me is the way it works, and the fact that it is then so easy to access, so easy to set up, and so easy to use. It's just, for me, it is a brilliant feature. So as I mentioned, setting up a classroom, establishing a classroom, getting into a classroom, getting your students to come and join you in the classroom, then it's becoming much, much, much easier. What I will do, though, is stop sharing my screen. What we have got is the feature called closed captions, which I mentioned very briefly before. And closed captions are an interesting feature. You have to turn on closed captions as a viewer to view what I'm saying, but it's basically meant to be an accessibility feature. For those students who may have problems hearing, then in theory, the closed captions will take any text that anyone's saying and turn it into text. So I think it's a user option. I was trying to use it as a presenter option. So closed captions is something that you can enable. so that you can see the text that's being created. So Google Meets, in a nutshell, very easy to set up now through Classroom, highly recommended through Classroom. But you can always establish them ad hoc just by going to meet.google.com, or you can establish them through a scheduled calendar entry to share. And certainly we're finding with staff, people like staff meetings that you may want to use Meet for, then yes, the Classroom, they're using it through calendar, it makes much more sense. Obviously now with students, the Classroom makes much more sense as the route to use that with them.